Good afternoon, this is Kathleen Pate and My Alabama Farm Life, and today I'm going to pull out my VEVOR still. I'm going to do a test run and see if I can make a gallon of distilled water today. I purchased this still about 5 months ago, and it's been sitting on my shelf ever since. So it's way past time to pull it down, set it up, and see what I can make with it. However, today's just going to be a test run. I need to go ahead and run some water through it. I need to figure out how to put it together and make sure that all the seals are nice and tight. Also to make sure that there's nothing broken. So this is not a fancy still. It was probably the cheapest one I could have bought off of Amazon. So I'm not expecting a whole lot. But we're gonna put it through its paces and we're gonna see how she goes. So this setup came with the large boiler. It also has a thumper keg and the condenser, but today I'm only gonna be using the boiler and the condenser. I have read through the instructions and it really doesn't seem like it's that difficult. It looks like all the parts are here, so I'm gonna get started putting it together. Since the lid was very handy, I decided to go ahead and pull out the lid and get it put together. And this comes with a thermometer, which was really easy to install. So right off the bat, I did not follow the instructions. That plastic seal needs to be on the inside of the lid, not on the outside as I have put it on. And I'm going to make the same mistake with the copper bend. I ended up leaving the seal on the outside and it needs to be on the inside. So that was pretty easy once I go back and fix it. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and pull out the thumper. When I pulled off the lid, there was a plastic seal, and it took me a moment to figure it out, but this goes along the edge of the lid. I don't need a thumper for distilled water, so I'm just going to go ahead and close it back up and put it aside. But I do need the condenser. These little spigots are going to be the in and out valves for the submarine pump that also came with this unit. That's going to help keep it cool during the distillation process. So when I finally got finished playing around with the plastic piping and the in and out valves, it's time to get down to business. This came with 2 corrugated pipes, but I only need 1 for this setup. I actually like how these little caps kept everything together and you didn't lose any parts. So I'm going to take this one in and I'm going to go ahead and attach it to the condenser. Now remember, I've never put together a still before, and this is okay to do, but it probably would have been a smarter thing if I put it on the copper bend on the boiler first and then attach the condenser to it, because it was a little awkward. I managed to do it, but it probably would have been easier the other way. All right, well, that is done, and those are pretty much the basic items I need to make distilled water. And I also repurposed a cake stand to give me a little height. Now I decided not to use this but this is an extension for the distillate outlet. So if I needed it to be a little bit longer, I could pull this out and use it, no problems. I've got about 3 gallons of water in my boiler. This should be more than enough to give me a gallon of distilled water to do a test run and to make sure that all the seals are nice and tight. I got a really nice seal and turned it on high and discovered that I had a problem. Yeah, so I had to turn it down to a lower temperature and it stopped the shaking, but this was a problem throughout the process. So as the boiler was heating up, I went ahead and pulled out the pump system and got it all set up and ready to go. I discovered very quickly that there was no way to balance out the intake and outtake of the water, and I was constantly adjusting it, trying to make sure that it did not overflow. It did overflow twice during this process. So I discovered quickly that this was not a project that I could walk away from. It was going to take a long time for the water to heat up. I had to make sure that the boiler wasn't rocking. And even though I didn't need the pump running in the condenser at that moment, I wanted to at least try to figure out how I could get a steady in and out going. I never could. I constantly had to watch the levels. I feel like it took forever to reach 200 degrees, but once we got some steam going, I finally started producing some distilled water. So for me, this was really a project that I could not walk away from. I was constantly monitoring the water levels in the condenser and also trying to make sure that the water itself was cold that was going into the condenser. I had 2 bottles of water that I had in the freezer that I used in the sink to keep my water nice and cold, but those melted really quickly. So in hindsight, I need to make sure that I have more ice so that this water stays cool in this condenser. And of course I had to make sure that that boiler wasn't rocking on the stove. So this was a really slow process, but I was able to make a good amount of distilled water. So far, I am really pleased with this little setup. The only problem that I found was this valve. When I shut down the water to stop the flow and then opened it back up, I saw that it was leaking, which is fine. This is just the in and out valve on the pump, on the water pump. So not a crucial piece of equipment. I think I can deal with it. So I'm gonna call this a successful test run of the VEVOR still. Although it is very light and definitely not a heavy duty piece of equipment, it did exactly what I needed to do. I was able to produce a gallon of distilled water. It did take a long time, but I did it. If you have any questions that I did not discuss in this video about this still, please leave them in the comments. And with that, you guys have a great evening.